we put the poof into our puff sleeve? Like this? It all comes from what we call a sleeve bolster. This little guy right here is what gives you the puff. And today we're going to talk about how you make one. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Trisha, your pattern nerd friend, where we talk about all things pattern making, fitting, and sewing here on this channel. Today we're going to be talking about the sleeve bolster, aka the puff to your puff sleeve. Now this one's kind of big, as you noticed when I had it in there. You can really make it any size that you want, and there's actually multiple ways to make a sleeve bolster. This is probably my favorite, but you can also use horsehair, or there's another method where you can use bias and a little bit of stiffener. But today we're going to go over my favorite one, and we'll go over what materials you need, and I'm going to go ahead and make it along with you, how big to make it, all the goodies. Just for reference, this is what I call my grandma shirt. This was actually a shirt that my grandmother started making before she passed away, and I inherited it along with a lot of her sewing materials. It was already cut out with the pattern and everything, and actually I think the reason that it wasn't made was because there was a clip in the middle of the back of the fabric that was cut out, and I think she just didn't know what to do with it. So what I ended up doing was I took it in like a little tuck in the back, which meant I had to take it in little tucks in the front. So I did like a little, I made it look intentional, and it worked out well because I'm smaller than my grandmother was. So it made the whole shirt smaller so I could actually wear it and it somewhat fit me. The pattern that she used, I think it was a simplicity pattern, actually called to make a little puff, but I kind of like it without. I'm not a big puff girl sleeve kind of girl. But there was a student of mine who was wanting to know how to get the puff in a very poofy sleeve that she was having, and I thought this would be a good time to make a video about it. So let's go over to the table. I'm going to talk about the different materials you're going to need, the measurements you might want, and how to install it into a sleeve that you're hoping to get a little more puffy action in. The supplies that you're going to need for this are some netting, and do be mindful that this is netting, it's not tulle, so it's made specifically for stiffness. Now this is just what I had on hand when I made this original sample bolster. Notice how it's a tighter weave of the netting, so something to be aware of. Just you want to make sure it gives bulk and it gives some lift. And you're also going to need a little bit of organza, and these can be any color that you want. It can match your garment or not, but those are the two things that you're going to want. And you are going to want to, out of the net, cut out what I like to call a football shape. Now, just for reference, my football is about 14 inches wide at the widest part, and about 10 inches here, so 5 inches, from the center line. And I have 2 layers here, which I recommend doing even if you have the more dense netting. So once you have this cut out, the next thing that you're going to want to do is put some gathering stitches along this edge of the football and along this edge of the football. Now, I feel like that gives me more gather, more poof to do them individually. Some people will go ahead and fold them together and then add the gathering stitches. That is an option as well. If you're in a bit of a time crunch, that might be easier, but I'm going to do it this way because this is how I like to do it. Be right back. Okay. And what I mean by gathering stitches is that I do 2 rows on either side of a straight stitch at the longest length so that we can gather it up. So once you have your gathering stitches, then you can start pulling your gathers. And yes, I know I stitched in black, but it's what was in my machine. Judge somebody else. But you want to gather each side up like so. And once it's gathered up, I usually try to shoot for around 7 to 8 inches. It's up to you, depending on, if this was a little girl's dress, you might not want to go quite as wide. But the reason I like gathering each side individually is I feel like it gives a bit more thickness, a bit more fullness and texture. Once you're kind of happy with one side, one thing I like to do whenever I'm gathering and using gathering stitches, once I got it set to where I want it to be, I usually try to get all of the threads and do a tailor's knot. So I take all the threads and I create a loop, and then I put the tail through the loop. And then try to get the knot to be close to where your gathering stitches are. You can do that by using just a pin, and I stick it through here, and that way it'll guide the knot to close where I want it to. So this side has the knots on both sides, and then I have more free will to kind of space out the gather here, and I can pull it a little tighter if I want to. And once you're happy with how long your gather is, like I said, I'm usually shooting for 7 to 8 inches. I'll knot this side. And now they're knotted, so I can go ahead and cut them off. Next, you might want to baste these two edges together. And because sometimes with a lot of netting, this could be really itchy or prickly going in against the skin. So that's why I usually back it off with some organza. So we'll get into that next. Let's baste this first, and now it's together. Now we can move on to the bias binding, and I just cut out about 9 inches by 1.5 inches to use for my bias binding, and you would just sew it on like any bias binding. And I would stitch it on here, tuck in my edges, fold this, and bind it. And there we go. Our bolster is all ready to be added to our sleeve, and you see how it's got that poof. And obviously you can make this smaller if you didn't want quite as big of a poof, but it's a good place to start, and it's a really simple shape. So now let's put it into our sleeve. On the inside of your sleeve, so this is the inside, this is my back, and here's the bolster, and here's my sleeve. Here's my shoulder seam, and you kind of want to make sure that your bolster is in the middle of your shoulder seam or the middle of your sleeve. And I also want to mention that this pattern has allowance for this puff. So this isn't magically going to add extra room in your sleeve. You do have to pattern it in a way that has that extra room, but this one was made this way. So I'm going to find the middle and line it up with my shoulder seam and just pin it there. And notice that I am pinning it into the seam allowance and going in the same direction. So what this is going to do, let me pin it and I'll show you. What this is going to do is when the person has the arm in the sleeve, the arm is going to push the seam allowance out, and look at that, it's a poofy sleeve. And so you would sew this you could do it by machine, you could do it by hand. And yes, I use contrasting thread and I just top stitched it. If you wanted to make this a little nicer and cleaner, you could hand stitch this bias on and you could hand stitch this into your armhole. But for the case of making this video and it just being an example, I just did it quick, down and dirty. But you could just stitch this into your seam allowance. Like I said, remember your puff is going towards the sleeve, and that's all you have to do. And there we go, a little poof poof. I've got some poofy sleeves. It's very like designing women, don't we think? I don't know, it's not really my vibe for everyday wear, but I have used the bolster when I've made some Edwardian costumes. We did a version of Hello Dolly where we had really big poofy sleeves, and we definitely used this method. It's something also that you could, if you wanted big dramatic poof sleeves, obviously your bolster would be a bit bigger, but you could put a lining inside so that that fullness and everything is inside the outer sleeve, and then the lining could be a regular sleeve, which would also help to hold its shape. And again, like this top is not quite as narrow as maybe I think it should be for, you know, my frame, because it was my grandmother's and I kind of alter fixed it to work for me. But hey, you know, it does the job, right? And I do want to show you, this is the bolster that I just made. I didn't actually sew it in, I just pinned it in to show you guys. And this is the one that's a little bit stiffer. So it's kind of collapsing on itself, but it has a little bit of a firmer hold than this does. So depending on what you're trying to go for, might be a good way to tell what kind of netting would work to give you the look and effect that you're looking for. So I hope you enjoyed this. This was kind of fun. I always love doing fun little cool things like this that I've learned from costuming that can really give a dramatic effect if you're doing something where you need that kind of drama, right? So if you loved this and you love being in the room with people who talk your language, interested in making fun, cool clothes, understand about fitting, or you want to learn more about fitting and diving into pattern making even more, why are you not coming to visit us at PatternCon? PatternCon is the first ever garment-based convention based around everything that happens before you go into the machine. Drafting, fitting, all things pattern making and garment making. We have lots of fun classes, but I do want to say tickets are going fast and classes are filling up. We are down to our last 100 tickets and we don't know how much longer they're going to last. PatternCon is happening August 1st and 2nd this year, 2026. You can find the link down below to check out all the classes, all the details, and find out how to purchase tickets to join us, because it is going to be a blast, a huge fun pattern fitting party, and we would love to have you there. If you just want to be in the know with all the fun, cool things that we have going on here at Creative Costume Academy, the best thing to do is to get on our newsletter, and that is down below. We call it our pattern news list, and I send it out twice monthly. Every month you get a freebie just for being on our list. You also find out about anytime we have a new Tricky Thursday. You can also subscribe and share this channel with your friends. That all helps me out as well. But in the newsletter, it's the best way to know what is going on. We have a lot of free events that happen throughout the year. They're tons of fun. Plus you get those monthly freebies. So if you want to stay in the know with all things pattern making, then check us out down below. All right, that's all I have for you today with my big poofy sleeves. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.